Story 1.
I'm not one for shopping, but there I was, standing at the entrance of the newly opened Grand Mall, feeling a mix of excitement and reluctance. My friend Sarah had been talking about this place for weeks, and somehow she managed to drag me along for the grand opening. "It'll be fun," she said, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. I wasn't so sure. The mall was massive, boasting more floors than I cared to count, and shops that seemed to stretch into infinity. Sarah pulled me from one store to another, her enthusiasm never waning. It was during our exploration of a quaint little bookshop on the 3rd floor that things started to get odd. The shop was tucked away in a corner, its entrance almost hidden behind a cascade of hanging plants. It was quiet, a stark contrast to the bustling corridors outside. As we browsed through the shelves, I noticed a small door at the back of the shop, slightly ajar. Curiosity got the better of me, and I found myself drawn towards it, leaving Sarah engrossed in a pile of mystery novels. Pushing the door open revealed a narrow hallway, dimly lit by flickering lights. It felt out of place, like it didn't belong in the shiny new mall. The air was cooler here, and I wrapped my arms around myself as I walked, wondering where the secret passage led. I must have lost track of time because when I looked back, the door to the bookshop was gone. Panic set in as I realized I was lost in this strange part of the mall no one seemed to know about. My phone had no signal here, and my calls for help echoed unanswered. The hallway finally ended at another door. Hesitant but desperate, I pushed it open and stepped into what looked like an old storage room filled with mannequins and discarded decorations. It was then I heard it, a soft humming sound. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Searching for the source, I stumbled upon an old radio tucked away in a corner. The humming was coming from it, even though it wasn't plugged in. Baffled, I reached out to turn it off when the door suddenly swung open. A security guard stood there, his expression a mix of confusion and concern. "Are you okay?" he asked. I could only nod, still trying to process everything. He led me back to the main part of the mall, explaining as we walked. The area I had stumbled into was part of the old building that used to stand here before the mall was built. They'd kept some of it intact for storage. As for the radio, he laughed and said it was probably picking up some residual electromagnetic waves. Old buildings like this were full of them. When we emerged back into the bright lights of the mall, I found Sarah waiting for me, worry etched on her face. I hugged her, relieved to be back in familiar territory. The rest of our day at the mall was uneventful, but I couldn't shake off the experience. It was only later that I learned more about the old building. It had been a theater, known for its eccentric owner who loved radio plays. Somehow that made my strange adventure less scary and more fascinating. Looking back now, I realize how a series of odd coincidences led me to experience something extraordinary in an ordinary place. It was a reminder that sometimes the most interesting stories are hidden just beneath the surface, waiting for someone curious enough to uncover them.
Story 2.
It was just another Thursday evening, and I was at the mall, closing up my little boutique. I've always enjoyed the quiet after the bustle of shoppers left. But that night, the silence felt heavier than usual. I began counting the day's earnings when the lights flickered. Probably just a surge, I muttered to myself. The mall's old. It happens. I finished up, grabbed my coat, and headed for the exit. That's when I noticed something odd. My reflection in the shop window wasn't alone. There was a shadowy figure standing behind me. I spun around, heart racing, but there was no one there. I shook my head, chuckling at my own nerves. "Get a grip, Jenna," I said aloud, trying to calm myself. I continued walking, but the feeling of being watched didn't leave. Every mannequin seemed to stare. Every echo of my footsteps sounded like a second pair following. I reached the main corridor, and that's when all the lights went out. "Great," I sighed, fumbling for my phone's flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, reaching the far end of the corridor where I saw the silhouette of a person standing completely still. I felt my heart begin to pound. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing through the empty mall. No response. I debated whether to approach or to turn back and find another way out. I thought, what the hell is this happening to me? I moved cautiously forward, the light from my phone casting long shadows ahead of me. As I got closer, the figure became clearer. It was a woman, dressed in the uniform of the mall's cleaning staff. She was staring blankly at a spot on the wall, unmoving. "Are you okay?" I asked, reaching out to touch her shoulder. She jumped, then turned to face me, confusion evident in her eyes. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you," she apologized, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I was alone here." She explained that she was doing her usual rounds when the lights went out, and she got disoriented in the dark. We laughed nervously at the coincidence of our fears. Deciding it was safer to stick together, we walked towards the exit using my phone's light. As we neared the doors, we noticed they were slightly ajar. That was unusual. The mall's security protocols were strict about locking up. We exchanged worried glances, but pushed the doors open and stepped outside. The cool night air hit us like a wave, a stark contrast to the stifling atmosphere we'd left behind. The parking lot was deserted, our cars standing solitary under the dim glow of the streetlights. We hurried towards them, eager to leave the eerie silence of the mall behind. As we reached her car, the cleaning lady, whose name I learned was Maria, thanked me profusely. "I don't know what I would have done without your light," she said, her smile genuine but tired. We said our goodbyes, and she drove off, leaving me alone in the vast parking lot. I unlocked my car and slid inside, taking a moment to collect myself before starting the engine. That's when I noticed it, a faint tapping sound coming from the trunk. My heart skipped a beat. "It's just your imagination," I whispered to myself, trying to shake off the fear. But the tapping persisted, growing more insistent. Swallowing hard, I got out of the car and approached the trunk. Every horror movie I'd ever seen flashed through my mind, urging me to leave it be. But curiosity and a nagging sense of unease propelled me forward. I unlocked the trunk and braced myself for what I might find. To my astonishment, there was a small cat inside, meowing pitifully. It looked up at me with big, scared eyes. Relief washed over me, followed by confusion. "How did you get in there?" I asked, though I knew it couldn't answer. The cat simply meowed again and jumped out, brushing against my leg before darting off into the night. I laughed at myself for being so scared over a cat. Shaking my head, I got back into my car and started the engine. As I drove home, I couldn't help but think about the strange series of events. The shadowy figure that wasn't there, the lights going out, meeting Maria, and finding the cat in my trunk. It all felt like pieces of a puzzle I couldn't quite solve. Well, maybe I'll be able to do it someday.
Story 3.
I'm not one for malls, honestly, but my wife, Sarah, and our kids, Max and Lily, can never seem to get enough of them. So, there we were, on a sunny Saturday afternoon, heading to the new mega mall that just opened up 2 towns over. It promised an experience unlike any other with its state-of-the-art indoor roller coaster and a food court that could rival any 5-star restaurant, or so the ads claimed. We arrived just after lunch, the parking lot already bustling with cars. Finding a spot took us a good 15 minutes, during which Sarah reminded me at least 3 times that we should have left earlier. Kids were bouncing in their seats, unable to contain their excitement. Once parked, we made our way inside, the cool air conditioning a welcome relief from the summer heat. The place was massive, bigger than any mall I'd ever seen. Stores of every kind lined the wide, marble-tiled corridors, and above us, the ceiling was painted to look like the sky. Max and Lily immediately begged to go to the arcade, but Sarah insisted we eat first. The arcade was on the 3rd floor. We decided to take the escalator up, but halfway, it suddenly stopped. Everyone on it confused looks exchanged. A mall worker quickly came over, apologizing profusely, saying they'd have it fixed in no time, and directing us to the elevator or the stairs nearby. We opted for the stairs, not wanting to risk getting stuck in an elevator next. The stairwell was eerily quiet compared to the buzz of the mall outside. As we climbed, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I chalked it up to the CCTV cameras likely installed in every corner. Reaching the third floor, we found the arcade without issue. It was a kid's dream come true. Flashing lights, beeping machines, and the smell of popcorn in the air. Max and Lily ran off to find their favorite games while Sarah and I found a bench nearby. Not even 5 minutes had passed when the lights flickered. Once, twice, then darkness. The arcade plunged into chaos as kids screamed and parents called out for their children. Sarah grabbed my hand tightly while we tried to spot Max and Lily in the dim emergency lighting now illuminating the space. The power outage lasted all but 10 minutes, though it felt much longer. When the lights came back on and the arcade machines whirred back to life, we found Max and Lily huddled together by a racing game, unharmed but shaken. Deciding we'd had enough excitement for one day, we agreed it was time to eat and head home. The food court was our next stop. It was crowded, but we managed to find a table after ordering our food. We sat down, relieved to finally catch our breath. That's when I noticed a man sitting alone at a table across from us. He was staring intently at his phone, oblivious to the world around him. What caught my attention wasn't him per se, but the fact that his phone was off. Just a black screen. Yet he scrolled and tapped away as if deeply engrossed in something fascinating. Curiosity got the better of me, and I kept glancing over. After about 10 minutes, he suddenly stood up, left his untouched tray of food on the table, and walked away still tapping on his turn-it-off phone. We finished our meal without further incident and decided it was high time we left this place. On our way out, we passed by a security guard who was talking to what looked like a very upset mall manager. We overheard snippets of their conversation. Something about a major power surge causing the escalator and arcade incidents and how it was a miracle no one got hurt. Driving home, Sarah and I talked about how strange our day had been. The kids, however, were blissfully recounting their arcade victories to each other, seemingly having already forgotten about the day's odd events. But the story didn't end there. Once home, as we were getting ready for bed, my phone buzzed with a news alert. A local news outlet was reporting an incident at the megamall we had just left. The headline sent chills down my spine. Mysterious disappearances at local megamall. According to the report, several people had gone missing during the power outage at the mall, all of them last seen in or near the arcade. The article mentioned that security footage had inexplicably failed during the outage, leaving no trace of where or how these individuals had vanished. I called Sarah over, and we read the article together in disbelief. Then, something clicked in my mind. The man with the turned-off phone. He had been sitting alone, seemingly disconnected from the world around him. But what if he was somehow involved? His behavior, so odd at the moment, now seemed sinister in retrospect. Unable to shake the feeling that we had, narrowly escaped something truly horrific. I decided to contact the police with what little information we had. I described the man in as much detail as I could remember, though I doubted it would be of any help. Weeks passed, and the disappearances at the megamall became a local mystery. No traces of those missing were ever found, and no leads emerged from my report about the man with the turned-off phone. The mall itself became a place of eerie fascination, with rumors of it being cursed or haunted circulating widely. Eventually, due to a significant drop in visitors and ongoing investigations, the mall closed down. Our family never spoke much about that day afterward, but it lingered in our minds like a bad dream. Then one evening while watching TV, a breaking news segment caught our attention. A man had been arrested in connection with several disappearances across the state, his method involving elaborate setups to isolate and abduct his victims in crowded places. A mugshot appeared on the screen, and my heart stopped. It was him, the man from the mall with the turned-off phone. The story concluded with a reminder of how perilously close danger can lurk, even in broad daylight among crowds. Our family's trips to malls became less frequent after that. replaced by outings to parks and nature reserves.
Story 4.
I'm not much of a storyteller, but something happened to me a while back that's worth sharing. It was just another Saturday, and I decided to hit the mall. Needed a new pair of sneakers and thought I might as well grab a bite while I was there. The mall was bustling as usual, families and teenagers milling about. I made my way to the sports store, tried on a couple of pairs, and finally settled on some decent Nikes, paid for them, and decided it was time for that bite. The food court was packed, but I managed to snag a table after grabbing a burger from my favorite joint. Halfway through my meal, the lights flickered. Not unusual, I thought. Malls have their quirks. But then they went out completely. A collective gasp filled the air, followed by the murmur of confused voices. Emergency lights kicked in, casting an eerie glow over the place. My first thought? Power outage. It happens, right? People started pulling out their phones, using them as makeshift torches. Mal Security was quick to assure everyone that it was just a temporary issue, and that the power would be back soon. I wasn't too bothered. It was kind of an adventure. From where I sat, I could see one of those toy claw machines. You know, you put in a coin, maneuver the claw, and try to grab a stuffed animal or whatever. Well, despite the power being out, that machine lit up all on its own. Started making noises too, like it was fully operational. A few kids nearby got excited, thinking it was some kind of free game moment. Curious, I walked over. The machine was indeed on, but it wasn't plugged into any visible outlet. Now, I'm no electrician, but that struck me as odd. A small crowd gathered around as one brave soul decided to put in a coin he found on the floor. The claw moved, he played, and believe it or not, he won a little stuffed bear. People were laughing, enjoying the moment, when suddenly all the lights came back on. The whole mall buzzed back to life as if nothing had happened. The claw machine went dark again. I couldn't shake off how strange that was. So, on my way out, I stopped by the mall's management office to ask about the claw machine. Turns out, the manager had a pretty logical explanation. He explained that recently, they'd been testing a new emergency power system designed to keep certain games and attractions running in case of a blackout. It was meant to provide a distraction and keep things calm during unexpected situations. The claw machine was one of the test subjects because it was battery-operated and could easily switch to its internal power source. As for the rest of the mall losing power, it was just a blown transformer outside the building. Nothing sinister or mysterious about it. I left the mall that day with a new pair of sneakers and an amusing story. Sure, for a moment there, it felt like I was in some kind of paranormal event. But in the end, it was just a strange combination of circumstances and modern technology at play. Goes to show how easily things can be misunderstood when you don't have all the facts.